our teach forever.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the final night of our Community Series Conversations with Dr. Abbie Robinson-Armstrong. My name is Elizabeth Frost, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at the Zionsville Police Department. I want to extend our gratitude to Dr. Robinson-Armstrong for taking her own time, to present these last 5 weeks to our community. People like Dr. Robinson-Armstrong are a great reflection of the residents in our community by showing how much we all care about one another and are always willing to step up when needed. Dr. Robinson-Armstrong's willingness to teach these topics really shows her passion and enthusiasm to help her community acquire knowledge about implicit bias. I feel very blessed to work in a community like Zionsville that shows we are willing to learn about different topics to help each other better understand issues and situations we may not know much about. I also want to thank Mayor Styron and Chief Spears for making these community conversations possible and for always supporting Zionsville. Great leaders don't set out to be a leader. They set out to make a difference, and these two have done just that for Zionsville. I would like to introduce you to Detective Josh Samuelson from the Zionsville Police Department.
Thank you, Detective Frost. My name is Josh Samuelson. I'm a detective with Zionsville PD. I'm in my 11th year here in Zionsville and in my 15th year in police work in general. I started my career with the Michigan City Police Department in Northwest Indiana. My current responsibility is the senior detective in the investigation section. And with that, I oversee the day-to-day responsibilities of the investigation section and also oversee the property and evidence room and any functions related to that. I've been very fortunate in my time here at Zionsville. I've gotten to do a lot of different things. I've served several roles within the agency. I've worked in patrol. I've been a general investigations detective. I've been a detective for the Hamilton-Boone County Drug Task Force. I served for a short time in our administrative section, working in kind of a support role for the agency. And then I've served on several specialty units and teams and boards and committees. I'm a member of the Use of Force Board here at Zionsville, along with a couple of my colleagues and a couple of our community members. And also, in addition to my day-to-day responsibilities, I am our department's accreditation manager for the CALIA accreditation process. And what that is it's the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. It's an international organization of law enforcement agencies, along with private and public partners. And what it is an organization that seeks to find best practices in policing and to build those practices into all the participating agencies and to reinforce those practices. Currently, we're very early in that process. It's about a 3-year process to reach accreditation. We are in the self-assessment phase at this point. And what that is just us looking within the agency, looking at our policies, procedures, and practices, and seeing where we meet those standards that are internationally recognized and where we may have room for improvement. I'm happy to report that so far we found that we meet or exceed standards in a lot of areas. There's always room for improvement. We do find those spots too. And once we get to a point where we actually meet those standards with this CALIA process, then we have to show that we're walking the walk as well and prove that we are actually meeting these standards in practice. So that's all part of this CALIA process. And I think it's very timely that I get to come participate in tonight's conversation. Improving racial justice. I anticipate Dr. Robinson-Armstrong's presentation is going to address procedural justice. And that's something that's very important, how we the fairness of how we treat both the community we serve and the people who visit the community, and then also the officers within the agency and employees of the agency. That fairness is important, and it's reinforced through this CALIA process, which, as I said, gets us to a point where we're adhering to those best practices in a fair and transparent manner. So I'm very excited to be here. Happy to answer any questions anybody may have. I love what I do, and I'm excited to talk about it. So feel free to reach out with any questions. And I look forward to Dr. Robinson-Armstrong's presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to her. Ma'am.
Thank you very much. I am really pleased to have been part of this process. And I'm looking forward to, in some way, continuing to support the city that I adopted 2 years ago in the best way that I can. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to improve racial justice. And I want to remind you that these topics all came from the community. They did not come from the mayor or from me. The mayor's office did a survey, and I believe there was some 80-some people involved in that survey. And the topics that were chosen for me to sort of expand on actually came from the survey. They were the 5 topics that the community wanted to, somebody to expand on. So I just want to remind us of that. So tonight, in terms of the presentation, we're going to define racial justice in related terms, and then we're going to get into advancing racial justice. And I'm going to focus on 2 different major, huge corporate organizations. The Business Roundtable, which is I'll talk about that in a little bit, but my research is going to come from Business Roundtable and from the National Education Association, because if we focus on corporate America and K-12 institutions, you're hitting a large part of the United States, and eventually you will, we'll see some change across this country. And then I'll get into personal strategies that you can put into place to advance racial justice. So the learning objectives for tonight basically are to understand the difference between racial injustice, racial equity, and racial justice. To understand the importance of developing a frame to advance racial justice, and then to be able to understand the strategies that advance racial justice in corporate America and the criminal justice system. And then identify strategies that advance racial justice in K-12 schools and build personal strategies, which I hope you will be able to do after tonight, to advance racial justice in your own community, in your homes. So let's talk about racial injustice. Racial injustice basically is defined as the act of being unjust to an individual or group based on race, particularly concerning legal recognized rights. It includes discrimination based on race or ethnicity in voting, employment, housing, and the administration of justice. In criminal law, it refers to the conduct such as racial profiling and the imposition of harsher penalties on convicted criminals, including the death penalty based on race. Now let's look at a picture here that sort of gives us a good idea of the difference between race, not the difference, but give us a good idea of what racial injustice is. You have a 15-year-old honor student with no prior record, steals a pair of sneakers. He's tried as an adult, and he gets 5 years in prison. Then you have a wealthy 79-year-old white man who rapes a 5-year-old girl. He gets 90 days house arrest. This is the United States. This is racial injustice. And what is racial justice? Racial justice is the systematic fair treatment of people of all races, everybody in the country, that results in equitable opportunities and outcomes for everyone. All people are able to achieve their full potential in life, regardless of race, ethnicity, or the community in which they live. That means that, people in the inner city can achieve their full potential, as well as people in the suburbs. Racial justice, or another term that sociologists use for racial justice, is racial equality. It goes beyond anti-racism. It's not just about what we are against, but it's also what we are for. A racial justice framework can move us from a reactive posture to a more powerful, proactive, and even preventative approach. And if you stay with me tonight, you're going to see that the Business Roundtable has put out, as of August the 19th, a framework and actions to do exactly that, to meet this last point, which is a racial justice framework can move us from a reactive posture to a more powerful, proactive, and even preventative approach. So stay with me. So racial equity versus racial justice. We need to know the difference. Racial equity, the original guide describes 4 important features of a racial equity lens. If we have a racial equity lens, we analyze data and information about race and ethnicity. We understand disparities and the reasons they exist. We look at structural root causes of problems, and we name race explicitly when talking about the problems and solutions. Racial justice, on the other hand, the racial justice lens adds 4 more critical elements, and that is being able to understand and acknowledge racial history, which is very uncomfortable for some of us in this country. We really don't want to talk about the racial history of this country. It also creates a shared affirmative vision of a fair and inclusive society, and focuses explicitly on building civic, cultural, and political power by those most impacted. It also emphasizes transformative solutions that impact multiple systems. And again, tonight, when we get to the information that I'm going to share with you that the Business Roundtable put together and put it out there publicly, you'll see that they really are focusing not on racial equity, but on racial justice. And if any of what they propose or what they're doing right now actually is effective, this will be a different country in the next 15 or 20 years. So what's a frame? I just talked about the fact that there's a racial equity frame, there's a racial justice frame. So what is a frame? And all of us need to have a frame in order to be able to attack this topic from a personal point of view or either from a professional point of view. So a frame is a lens or world view, and we all have a world view based on, and we've talked about that in the other sessions. We know that our world view is based on the world we live in, the tiny world that we live in, and it's based on the experiences that we've had. And the frame, though, is often unconscious. It's thought with human beings, which human beings see as an issue or problem. So the only way you can end up dealing with racial justice is you've got to have a frame. You've got to understand of racial justice and what it is before you can actually put yourself out there to do anything about it. Frames are related to social cognition processes that are encoded in our brain that help us quickly make sense of complex information and then make individual or collective decisions on that basis. All of us who've been to graduate school in this country have a frame. Every one of us who graduated from any kind of graduate program in this country or any other country, we have a frame to look through based on the discipline that we majored in. So that's really what I'm talking about, the frame that gives you the view that you look at the world through and the lens that you use when you're looking at the world. These processes generate deeply embedded perspectives that are easily activated in the subconscious, especially through devices like images, stories, stereotypes, and slogans. And what that really means is your frame is embedded in your brain. And when you come in contact with an image or stories or stereotypes or slogans or anything else, jokes, or whatever else that's that's racist, immediately you begin to think, oh, well, that's racist. Now, what do I do about it? Now, if you don't have that in your frame, if that's not part of your frame, then you don't see a problem with racial justice, racial injustice. When frames are applied to a social problem such as racial justice, they lead to conclusions about the nature of that problem, the responsibilities of various parties, and potential solutions and actions. So that's why you need a frame in order to advance racial justice. You need to know something about it and implant it in the top, in the back of your head. And when you come in contact with racial injustice, then you know what to do. So let's talk about something good and something bad. George Floyd was murdered on May 15, 2020. And on August 19, 2019, the Business Roundtable redefined the purpose of a corporation to promote an economy that serves all Americans. Now, you know as well as I do that we've had a lot of misdoings and misgivings by corporate America for many, many years. So the Business Roundtable is an association of 181 CEOs of America's leading companies, and they came together to work to promote a thriving U.S. economy and expand opportunities for what they call all Americans through sound public policy. And I'm using their information tonight because speaking through them is the best way to attack this kind of subject. When an organization, a powerful organization like Business Roundtable, decides that they're going to attack a subject or social problem like racial injustice, there's really no better way no better place to go to get information about what they're doing, and then be able to talk about what other organizations could do based on what they've decided to do. So let me give you some ideas. Let me talk about the Business Roundtable just a bit. The Business Roundtable is CEOs leading companies with more than 15 million employees and more than 7 trillion in annual revenues. As major employers in every state, Business Roundtable CEOs take seriously the responsibility of creating quality jobs and with good wages. These leaders join with communities, workers, and policymakers to build a better future for the nation and its people. And I should say also, I didn't put this in the slide, but the Business Roundtable is considered a conservative organization in the United States. And I just put up here just a few of the organizations, a truncated list of the corporations. If you can just look, and I'll read off just a few of them. ADP, Aflac, American Express, Amazon, Anthem Blue Cross, Bank of New York Mellon, AT&T, Apple, Bristol Myers Squibb, Citigroup, Caterpillar, Comcast, Duke Energy, Delta Airlines, ExxonMobil, HP, Kimberly-Clark, Marriott, Microsoft, Phillips 66, UPS, PepsiCo, USAA, Xerox, Texas Instrument, Home Depot, Eli Lilly and Company, Deloitte & Touche, Cummins, FedEx, Cigna, ConocoPhillips, the Walt Disney Company, the Coca-Cola Company, Carrier, United Airlines, and I'm not going to read them all off, but as you can see, that this is just a truncated list of the corporations that have come out with an agenda to quell racial injustice in this country. And when I saw this list, when I was doing my research for this presentation tonight, I printed it out so that I can keep it on my computer, because what it will tell me is these are the organizations that I should support in order to move them forward, because they're trying to do good work. Now, what did the Business Roundtable do? They came out with a strategic framework. What they did is they went back into their little cubby hole and they actually redefined what the purpose of a corporation was. Earlier on, we all know that the purpose of a corporation was to make money, make lots of money, and pay lots of money to their shareholders. Well, that's all down the drain now because they went back on August the 19th and said, no, that's not really the purpose of a corporation. Let's really redefine what a corporation is. So what they're saying now is that a corporation is delivering value to our customers. We will feature the tradition of American companies leading the way in meeting or exceeding customer expectations. Investing in our employees. This starts with compensating them fairly and providing important benefits. It also includes supporting them through training and education that help develop new skills for a rapidly changing world. And basically they are saying we foster diversity and inclusion, dignity and respect. This coming from 181 corporations in the United States is a wonderful message. They're also saying that the purpose of a corporation is to deal fairly and ethically with suppliers. We're dedicated to serving as good partners to the other companies, large and small, that help us meet our missions and support the communities in which we work. We all know that's not been the case with a lot of corporations. They get a little piece of land in various communities around the country, and they don't do anything for the communities. In fact, Eli Lilly and Company, for example, is one of the corporations that is respected across the world because of the work that they do, not just here in Indianapolis, but they do a lot of work, and I'm privy to this, for higher education across this country and other disciplines across this areas of across this country. So their excellent idea of what they mean by supporting the community in which we work. They're saying we respect the people in our communities and protect the environment. And oh my goodness, protecting the environment. That was wonderful for my ears, because when you think about all those areas in the country where the environment has been the death of a lot of people who couldn't move out of those areas where large corporations went in to and emptied all kinds of stuff into the waters and so on and so forth. So protect the environment by embracing sustainable practices across our businesses and generate long-term value. They didn't forget about the shareholders, see, for shareholders who provide the capital that allow companies to invest, grow, and innovate. We are committed to transparency and effective engagement with shareholders. Each of our stakeholders is essential. This framework then has led them, we'll get to the end of it in just a minute. The other purpose of a corporation, the last two purposes, are to deliver value to our customers. We will feature, we've already gone over that one. Invest in employees. Let's go to the next one. All right, so where we are now is the Business Roundtable put out a huge document. It's on the internet. You can go to it. You just put in Business Roundtable, Advancing Racial Justice. They put out an enormous document on how and what they are going to do to advance racial justice in the areas of employment, finance, education, and criminal justice. And if they do if they meet one or two of the strategies, if they are effective, this is going to change the nature of the United States. So what actions are they going to take in terms of employment? They want to expand the Workforce Partnership Initiative with a focus on underrepresented workers, to bring companies and education and training provided together to train and recruit workers for high demand careers by providing internships, apprenticeships, and our full-time employment opportunities. That in itself, if that happens, you're going to have a lot more people employed in this country, and a lot more underrepresented individuals employed. And again, that's going to raise the level of the economy in the United States, and it's going to raise the level of the lifestyle of people, regardless of their ethnicity or their race. They're going to support voluntarily public disclosure of key diversity metrics on at least an annual basis, including board diversity, senior executive diversity, workforce diversity, and supplier diversity. Now, if this gets out, if these metrics get out there, that gives all of us an opportunity to call these organizations and say, these corporations, and say, okay, I see the board, I see that you have one chicken on your board and all the rest, everybody else on the board is a duck. So you said in 2019 that you were going to support voluntary disclosure of the diversity, but you're not doing anything about it. I'm looking at your board diversity. You don't have any women on your board. You don't have any people of color on your board. You don't have any senior executives, any CEOs, and in terms of supplier diversity, you don't have any suppliers, people of color's businesses that supply, who can supply products for major corporations. Where are they? They've got the Business Roundtables put this stuff out there publicly. So I do think that they're going to work on this. And I do think that they're going to diversify to some extent, of course, their boards, their senior executive level people, workforce diversity and supplier diversity. And once again that happens, that's going to impact the lives of everybody in this country, not just rich white people. Another employment action that they have agreed to do, and that is to conduct periodic pay equity reviews and regular pay equity analyses, and to implement processes to review and close gaps. This is really a critical point for organizations, regardless of whether they're nonprofit or profit organizations. All of my years in higher education, this was one of the strategies that we did, universities did and are continuing to do in order to ensure that, for example, a professor of biology in California is paid at the same rate that a professor in Indiana is paid. Because after all, that professor went to school and got the same PhD, probably from the same institutions, and deserved the same rate of pay. And so when I was, for 19 years, I was in a university, and I was part of the group that called in the consultants to do every year pay equity reviews. If organizations do this, they're going to find out that, oh yeah, we're not paying the women. We're not paying the people. We got people of color doing the exact same job, and they're making $50, $60 less than whatever everybody else is doing. So the Business Roundtable is saying, okay, we need to do this, and we are going to do it. They also call for an increase in the minimum wage. Thank you, Jesus. The minimum wage. If those 181 corporations increase the minimum wage or in some way, again, that is going to lift up everybody in this country, everyone, and especially underrepresented individuals. And they say they're going to support federal legislation to ensure paid family and medical leave benefits are available to as many working Americans as possible. This is another area where many, many Americans, regardless of their ethnicity or their race, have an issue. Anybody with children know that this has been a huge issue and still is a huge issue in the United States. So if they're saying that they're going to support federal legislation to ensure that paid family and medical leave benefits are available, that will really change the nature of this country. Now let's look at what they say they're going to do in terms of finance. In finance, they're going to contribute grants and low-cost debt to community development financial institutions that are Black-led and or serving Black communities and Latino-led and or serving the Latino communities. Business Roundtable is setting an organization-wide goal of $1 billion in support by 2025. This, the idea that Black-led organizations and Latino-led organizations for for as long as the United States has been the United States, have had difficulty getting funding for any of their projects and so on and so forth. If they now are going to help to fund those Black-led and Latino organizations, it's going to create wealth, of course, in the Black and Latino communities, the same way that it creates wealth in any other ethnicity group, in any other ethnic groups, in any other community. And they said that they are going to set a roundtable-wide goal of $600 million by 2025 in financial contributions to provide vetted Black-led and Latino minority depository institutions with capital and deposits. Just imagine what that's going to do in terms of creating racial justice. In terms of financing, they are going to provide technical assistance, and that's again has been a stopgap for Black and Latino small business owners. They don't have the money and the finances to purchase the consultancies in terms of technical assistance that they need in order to operate effective businesses and be effective with whatever they're doing. So Business Roundtable is going to provide that technical assistance to these small business owners, including ongoing mentorship and support, with a roundtable-wide goal of reaching 50,000 Black and Latino small business owners by 2025. What that's going to do is that's going to increase the level of Black and Latino-owned businesses in this country that are very effective across this country. And again, that's an action that has been needed for many, many years. They're going to provide additional lending to Black and Latino small business owners, and that again has been a problem. They couldn't, go to the bank. As soon as you walk in the bank, they know they're not going to give you the loan, and so you're out the door. Make financial contributions to funds focused on the minority-owned small businesses, such as Entrepreneurs of Color Fund and Black Vision Fund, and engage others to co-invest. So let's go on. What are they going to do about education? They're going to partner with the Student Freedom Initiative Fund, a nonprofit that eases student debt burdens for STEM students. Now, STEM is a science, technology, engineering, and I forgot the other word. Anyway, it's the scientific folks at minority serving institutions to provide income contingent financing to reduce student loan debt. And remember, I told you last time that student loan debt, we saw the data, student loan debt for people of color is just off the top, because they don't, if you don't have any money to go to school, you don't have any money to go to school. That's just it, period. So if you want to get through school, then you have to just borrow $100,000, $200,000 worth of loans. And when you get out of school, then you're paying those loans back for the rest of your life. So the Business Roundtable recognized that, and so they're going to now to do something to reduce the possibility that people in the STEM fields will be able to come out of school without huge loans, as well as they're going to provide internships and mentoring, tutoring to juniors and seniors majoring in STEM at 11 historically Black colleges and universities. Now, that in itself, having the Business Roundtable folks out there at these 11 historically Black colleges and universities, mentoring students that are majored in STEM, is going to increase the number of students that come out of those institutions and go into the STEM fields across the United States. So that I see as a wonderful, wonderful idea, a wonderful strategy in terms of education. Let's see what they're going to do in health. What they're saying they're going to do in health is they're going to engage in a health equity benefit evaluation initiative to identify employee health benefit practices that may reduce racial health disparities for employees. Now, we already talked about the fact that, and we don't even need to talk about it, actually. We all understand that the COVID situation has really focused on and brought to forefront the health disparities in this country. And we all know that the majority of people, based on their ethnicity, that are dying from COVID are people of color for many, many reasons, many factors. They don't have insurance. They can't go to the doctor. By the time they get to the doctor, they're too sick to save them. I mean, just many factors. They're going to work with health plans. That's another issue. Work with health plans and other healthcare partners to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion practices of the organizations that provide healthcare services to their employees, and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion practices to address implicit bias. Now, we all know what implicit bias is, but what they're actually saying here is that health plans across this country have up to this point, they don't understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so their practices certainly don't reflect an understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's one of the reasons you have so many people that are not insured. The Business Roundtable also says that they're going to support efforts to expand telehealth coverages to employees of color and others during the pandemic and beyond. And they're going to work with members to develop strategies to help address barriers that inhibit the appropriate collection and use of race and ethnicity data to improve health outcomes. I want to talk about this a minute. Remember when COVID hit the United States and they were putting out the data, and the data showed that 55 people or however many people got COVID, and how many people died and how many people were hospitalized. The data was not disaggregated. Nobody thought to disaggregate the data to say, well, who is it? Who is it that's dying? Who is it that's getting COVID? Who is it that's getting better from, the various medications and all the things that the healthcare system was providing? Somewhere right after, I don't remember how many months after COVID came to the United States, but there was a big outcry across this country, and I'm sure you remember that, for data to be disaggregated. Like, who is it? Who's getting this? Who's it impacting? And once that data was disaggregated, then you could see that it impacted people of color more so than it impacted other people of other ethnicities. So, and if you can't see that data, you can't have effective health outcomes, because the people are just dying and you don't know who's dying. So another action they're going to engage in, and that is they're going to convene their own members to discuss businesses' role in addressing social detriments of health. And again, this is a topic that's been discussed across this country for several years now, the social detriments of health, and develop a social detriment roadmap that businesses can use to engage in community partnerships to address social detriments of health. What that really means is that they're going to pull their members together, and they're going to create a map that businesses across this country can use and say, well, look, I know why this particular group is getting lead poison, I know why this particular group is getting such and such and such and such, all the other things that happen to us, because this is what's, these are the factors in those communities. And this is where we need to focus our support in order to be able to help these people to live a much healthier life. So this is a great action that they're going to take. And then they're going to provide companies with actionable steps that they can take to partner with local communities to address these social detriments of health issues in the communities in which they do business. If they do this, you wouldn't have Flint. If they do this, you wouldn't have issues like in I think it's Memphis or I can't remember, Tennessee, one of the cities and areas in Tennessee where you've got a lot of people dying from cancer because of what's being admitted into the water and the environment. So that kind of thing would stop if if businesses would use this roadmap, and then they would take action steps to partner with the local communities to put stops to social detriments of health. Another one, social detriment of health. Right here in Indianapolis, we have businesses on the east side, but we have what people are calling a food desert. Now, I never heard of the word food desert until I came to Indianapolis, and you would think they're living in Redondo Beach, California, and being right next to Los Angeles, there would have been food deserts. But there were no food deserts in that big old Humpty Dumpty place, primarily because the city council made sure that there were no food deserts, and the businesses in all and around those areas where a lot of underrepresented people live, the city made sure that those businesses were doing whatever they could to ensure that those people, the students and the children and the families and the pregnant women and so on and so forth in those areas were getting the food that they needed in order to survive. So we've got businesses on the north side of Indianapolis here that right now aren't necessarily doing anything to deal with, for example, the food deserts that exist. And health, the last action I believe that is for health, they're going to convene member companies to develop strategies to identify and address aggregate itemized social needs for their employees. So that's going to make a big difference because these people employ thousands, I forgot the millions, how many million people they employ. But if they employ millions of folks across this country, what's 15 million people across this country? Just think about this particular strategy and how it's going to, if it impacts 15 million people, we're going to have some happy campers in this country and some people that are living much better lives. Now, what are they going to do for housing? And again, I just want to say that I was really, really shocked when I started to dig into, the strategies that Business Roundtable was going to put into place to advance racial justice. This is like giving candy to, it's like giving me a piece of chocolate, because I'm a chocolate lover and I don't buy chocolate for that reason, because when I buy chocolate, I eat it all, like a child, and eat it all up quickly. So I don't buy chocolate. I don't allow myself that luxury. So for housing, what they're going to do is they're going to set a roundtable wide goal of producing and preserving 200,000 affordable units by 2025, including mixed income communities at a cost of $30 billion in funding. That's going to increase the quality of homes that our children will be living in. And again, that will increase the lifestyle that they will live. Also, they're going to encourage mortgage lenders. And remember, we talked last week about the fact that people of color often have difficulty getting a mortgage. So they're going to encourage mortgage lenders to responsibly increase the number of new sustainable Black and Latino homeowners by providing 120,000 purchase loans totaling $25 billion in mortgage purchase or origination to Black and Latino customers by 2025, and enhancing efforts to deliver refinance loans to Black and Latino customers. So if this happens, it'll be a wonderful thing across this country. Now, Business Roundtable also, and I was really surprised at this, they didn't stop with health and education and finance and the other areas that we just talked about here. They actually went into, and this is on the web, so you can find it. They went into putting out a paper, and it's also part of what I've just discussed on advancing racial justice. They put out their own paper, their own strategies and reform principles to reform the criminal justice system in this country. And I'm took all of this information from Business Roundtable. I'm not quoting them. This is actually from the document that I studied. So, in terms of reform principle, they are encouraging community engagement. They applaud bipartisanship support for more investment in programs to promote community policing and increase police force diversity and community representation. They also commit to working with community groups to uplift underserved populations. And in terms of data collection and transparency, which I found out by reading research studies when I was preparing to do some work for the Zionsville Police Department, I found out that this is a major problem across the United States in police departments. Transparency, well, you can see it on the television too, when people get out there and start talking and they don't really tell you the whole story and the truth and nothing but. But transparency, Business Roundtable says, is a core democratic value. It's essential not only to better protect our citizens, but also to build trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. And so they're saying or suggesting that better data on law enforcement officer misconduct will improve departments' hiring decisions, hold departments accountable, inform solutions, and enable better targeting of resources. And I think that was very well said and couldn't have been said any better. Because data informs any organization or groups of organizations, and what it does is it helps you to do, it tells you, first of all, I'm doing a good job here, but maybe I need to, change or do something different over here. And that's the purpose of data. But when I was doing the research, I found out that that's a real issue. A lot of police departments don't necessarily collect all the data they need to collect. And when they do collect the data, it is not shared with the community. And it's sometimes, according to the research that I did, it's not even shared with the people in the department at the lower levels. The only way you can move an organization, and I'm pulling now on my my background in leadership, that I got from going to a leadership program at Harvard University. The only thing you can do, one of the major things you can do to move an organization is to be transparent with the data. Because if you're at the top and the data shows that you got a problem, and the folks at the bottom don't really know that problem exists, they're going to continue to do exactly what they've been doing for the rest of their life, rest of their employed life. So sharing that data from the top to the bottom and some of the data with the community. will certainly help to reform some of the police departments. Now, some police departments do this, and they do it well. I did find those at San Francisco, for example. I found that they do it, and they do it well. So there are some across the country that do it. And then they are suggesting, Business Roundtable is suggesting that to obtain federal funding, police departments should be required to collect, maintain, and report data, including on detentions and use of force, as well as demographic information about arrests and detainees. I don't think I have a whole lot of time to tell you this, but I have a friend who's a statistician, a colleague in Los Angeles, and she was working years ago with the Los Angeles Police Department, and they collect data, of course. So they turned their data over to her, and what she found out was, looking at the stops, the stops that the police had made over a certain period of time in Los Angeles, she found out that the data told them, the police department, that the stops that were made, primarily the majority of people who were stopped were people of color, but the majority of people who had drugs when they were stopped were white people. Just imagine that. Now, accountability. I'm not going to read all of this, but they're saying that the vast majority of police officers are dedicated public servants who pursue their work with courage and decency, and I actually believe that. I do believe that the majority of people who go into policing go in there with the idea that they're going to serve the community in which they are working. But they're saying for police officers who abuse their positions or departments that allow abusive behavior, accountability is critical. So Business Roundtable supports the establishment of a national police misconduct registry, and the purpose of this, as far as I can see, would actually it would prohibit police who have created all kinds of issues for the department in one city and then move to another city and get employed and create the same issues. So I think that's a good move. Further, according to the Business Roundtable, the Department of Justice should establish minimum decertification standards to guide misconduct investigations, which should be carried to completion. And then finally, to foster accountability at the department level, Business Roundtable supports grants to states to conduct pattern or practice investigations. Let's go on. They said, while principal responsibility for police should remain at the state and local level, and I believe that too, the continued crisis of excessive use of force, the loss of Black lives, and related loss of trust in law enforcement across many communities of color necessitate federal minimum standards for policing that are readily understood by the American people and are tied to eligibility for grants. I don't know whether, I think I told you this last week. Eligibility for universities to get grants is tied to the principles that universities should be implementing across the institution in order to get a grant. I got a grant, the last grant I got was for $2 million. In order to get that grant, I had to prove that the university I worked for met all of the standards in terms of what, the organization that was the grantee had put out there. So this move right here would really, really make it better for the departments, because when you get a grant, you know that that your organization has the opportunity to fulfill whatever you put in your proposal, to do it and do it well, because you've already done your assessment and you know that you got places there in order to, you got everything in place in order to be successful. And Business Roundtable urges policymakers to raise the standard for use of no-knock warrants and to require police departments to collect and report data around their use. I was really surprised that Business Roundtable, to be honest with you, got deep down into reforming the criminal justice system, because after all, these are These are 181 CEOs of major corporations across this country. But again, this is why I'm using this information, because there's no need for anybody else to say anything, because they've already said it all. It's already out there. So let's go on and see what the national, we can move on.
Next one.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. All right. So the National Education Association is an association that thousands and I say even probably 1 million teachers belong to in the United States. So what they came out with was we're right there. They came out with a strategic framework for advancing racial justice in education. So what they're saying is schools across this country should promote a vision of public education that advances inclusion, equity, and racial and social justice in schools and society. And I think that if you look at the mission statements of most schools across this country, they do actually respond to this particular bullet. However, carrying it out is a different thing. They also say that schools should dismantle white supremacy and ensure that bigotry or discrimination based on gender, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth are not part of the classroom, the educational curriculum, school policies, and discipline practices. And they say that schools must be safe for all students and free from state-sanctioned, racialized, and gender-based violence. And some of that does not happen on school grounds. Remember, I told you last week that a lot of that happens on the school bus, and some of it happens, of course, on the playground. And so the schools have to know that and be able to deal with it. They also think that schools should, the strategic framework should dismantle discipline systems that create a school to prison pipeline. That's been an issue that's become a real issue in this country, that prison to pipeline. And I'll never get it out of the back of my head when I saw on television the police taking this little 6-year-old out of the school in Florida with handcuffs on. That was really a poignant sight. Work must result in action programs, campaign policies, and capacity building efforts for local NEA members that dismantle institutional racism now and into the future. And then they say that schools should focus on recruiting, engaging, and promoting the leadership of educators of color to share the ladder of opportunity. Those of us who go to K-12 schools, have parents and people like me who visit them because I've been invited into the school, you need to look and see who's in the leadership role in those schools. If you don't have any people of color in the leadership role in your school systems, you got a dearth there in terms of leadership. Moving on, programs, campaigns, and projects must be driven by goals that are clearly outlined, promote education policies and curriculum which highlight and honor the histories and cultures of people of color and indigenous people. Again, this is a huge emotional situation, can create an emotional situation for people of color when the curriculum has nothing in it that I can relate to, which was true when I was going to school, nothing in it that I could relate to, not a single line. It really creates an emotional baggage, it tells you deep down inside that you're not worthy. And so those parents out there tonight need to be looking at the school systems where your children go to figure out, what's in the curriculum, what are they being taught, and whose histories are they being taught. If there's a dearth in terms of the history of people of color or the history of slavery and so on and so forth, then you need to ask questions. Ensure that all students have access to a safe and quality education regardless of their country of origin or immigration status, and then promote and support the engagement of students of color and LGBTQ students. Those are the groups that typically get beat up all the time, the LGBTQ and the students of color. Let's move on. Now, the NEA is suggesting that schools, in order to, eradicate race, in order to promote racial justice and create racial justice in education, that schools need to train the administrators, the teachers, not just the administrators, teachers, and the parents. Because if you don't include all of those entities in the training, to help them understand race, equity, and inclusion principles, the parents are going to stop it right at the door. They're going to say, we're not having it. No. The school first needs to create a space to talk about race. The schools need to stop, this whole notion about avoiding the talk about race, because silence is complicity. Then they need to train all of these groups, bring them together so that they can understand the principles. And then they need to figure out how to, identify the problems, and then go from identifying the problems to finding out what the causes are. And that means finding out what the causes are, meaning disaggregating that data. Then they need to conduct what is called a system analysis, identify the root cause of the inequities, and need to stand up and say, look here, let's look at the history. Why, when did this start to happen? How did this get in the way? Because if you don't examine the history, you really don't know how the problem materialized. And then come up with solutions and strategies and leadership. And that's not the end of it. Continuously evaluate the effectiveness and adapt new strategies. So now we're getting to the end of this presentation, and I'm going to stop here for a minute and see if there are any questions.
Yes.
Because I'm going to focus now on personal strategies that you can put into place yourself to advance racial justice and further understand power, privilege, supremacy, and oppression and equity. Are there any questions?
We don't have any questions or comments right now.
Okay. All right. So personal strategies. Read everything you can find. I just gave you some examples, like how white people got made, white privilege. You have that because I gave that to you last week. White fragility. You have that. I gave that to you. Explaining white privilege to a broke white person. That's a really critical book because it does, people who are poor think that white privilege comes with money, and it doesn't. It's much more than money. 21 racial migrations you hear on a daily basis, and so on. Let's go on to the next one. Listen.
I'm sorry. Here we go.
Listen. There's some podcasts you can listen to: Teaching While White, Breakdancing with Wolves, Black Like Me, and this Black Like Me has been around for about 30, 40 years, I think, Black Like Me. But anyway, you can listen to podcasts of that nature. These are just examples. And then watch Why I'm Not Racist. It's only half the story by Robin DiAngelo. Is a video. How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Discussing Race is a TED Talk. This Is Us is also a video. Racism is Real is a video. Confronting Intergroup Anxiety. Can You Try Too Hard to Be Fair? In the White Man's Image is a PBS documentary. So there's a lot of stuff out there you can listen and watch. Notice who is and who is not represented in ads. Now you notice that the ads recently, since George Floyd died, I noticed this, have gotten a lot more color in them. But there's been a lot of complaint for years about white-only ads. Now I noticed that in Indiana, there's a lot of companies that are still white-owned ads. And, they don't seem to have any problems with putting out a white-owned, what I'm saying is an ad with all white people in it, or all men. They don't have no problems with that, but maybe one day. Who are your close friends? What is the racial mix in this group? As you move through the day, what's the racial composition of people around you? Are you on your commute, at the coffee shop, at your gym, at your workplace, at your church, at your child's school? Notice, look at that. That's the first thing I look at when I go into a church, when I go into a school, when I go into the gym. I'm looking to see who's in there. If there's nobody in there that looks like me, I'm out of there in a hurry. Notice how much of your day you are speaking about racism. Who are you engaging with on these issues? Who are you not engaging with? And why do you think this is the case? Who do you notice on the covers of the magazines you take? What roles are people of color fulfilling in the images in those magazines? Is it an Aunt Jemima situation, or are there images in the magazine that show people of color in the same way it shows everybody else? Doctors and lawyers and teachers and so on and so forth, parents and that kind of stuff. Another, connect. These are some organizations you can connect with and learn a lot from. Teaching Tolerance, Anti-Defamation League, Define America, Teaching While White, and White Awake. Those are organizations, national organizations, that you can connect with and learn as much as you want to learn about advancing racial justice. And engage. Now, this strategy can be the hardest one for people new to racial justice work. Engaging in racially mixed settings can trigger age-old power and privilege dynamics. The goal is to be a learner more than a knower, because you're new to the situation, which is exactly the opposite of what dominant U.S. culture teaches people to be. And then act. Interrupt the pattern of white silence by speaking openly with friends, family, and colleagues about what you're doing and learning about racial justice. Find out whether your school, workplace, or faith group has a diversity or equity committee. What can you learn from them, and join that group? Now, I can tell you that across the United States, every major university has a diversity, they don't call them diversity, but equity committee. And if you look at those committees, you will see that in many instances, especially on the East Coast and the West Coast, there are more white people on those committees than there are people of color, because they are really interested in advancing racial justice. And in fact, I was the chair for many years of one of the equity committee at my university, and it was, when time come to select members, it was difficult for me because I was trying to make sure that the committee was diverse, but I had so many white people that were interested that, eventually what I did is I just made the committee much larger and let everybody who wants to be involved be involved. And it worked for the university. Find organizations such as the Privilege Institute, YMCA, and other nonprofits doing racial justice work, and donate your time, money, or other resources. A lot of my white friends make sure that they're down at the YMCA handing out meals. They are members of the Privilege Institute, and they're doing volunteer work the same way that I'm doing volunteer work here in Zionsville, because that's what we are trained to do, and that is to give to be of service to the organizations and the places where we live. Finally, when the status quo is racist, disrupt it. Don't let it stop. Disrupt it. Improve for example, the representation of books in the library. First thing I did when I went to Zionsville Library, I looked at the books that were out there for children. I wanted to see whether those books were diverse. What kind of books are children in Zionsville reading? And of course, that they based on what the librarian puts out there. But Zionsville has a fairly good collection of diverse books for children in this city. Conduct an equity audit within an organization that you belong to. Create a learning community to set up goals, objectives, and action plans. Seek out diverse groups of friends for your children. If you don't have, your children are all playing with only white children, what are you teaching them? Find out how slavery, the Civil War, and Jim Crow eras are being taught in your local school. phone, email, and post about articles, blogs, movies you find that are impactful. And when the status quo is racist, disruptive, call or write your congressperson, state legislators, and governors to support criminal justice reform. I don't see that. That's the thing that I think is missing in Indiana. I don't see, maybe it's happening, but I just don't see a lot of people acting as advocates for anything, actually. I don't see it publicly. Maybe it's here, but the state that I came from, people were very, very active in writing Congress and state legislators and governors to support all kinds of things, not just criminal justice reform. Call or write your state legislators and your congressperson and governors about racial injustice. If you see it, write it down and send a letter. That's the only way you're going to get it stopped. Write universities about implementing diversity strategies that effectively promote racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic diversity on campus. If you're sending your child to a university and you're paying all that tuition, you need to make sure that they're implementing diversity strategies that effectively promote racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic diversity on campus. And believe me, people do that. Many parents do that. They write the institution when they see something that's, out of whack. They'll write the president and say, look, you need to take some action here. Work with the human resources departments in your companies to determine whether your company has a recruiting channel that's predominantly white. And that can be the case, especially in certain parts of the United States. If the company does not have a diverse recruiting channel, they are going to bring in all white people. That's period. And let's put a period behind that. So find out whether your company has a diverse recruiting channel. And if they don't, then, I'd want to know why. Don't buy from companies that use prison labor. Start a Daughters of Abraham book club in your church. Look that up, Daughters of Abraham book club, if you're a church person in your church. When people say Black Lives Matter is violent terrorist group, tell them that there are fringe groups that are being misrepresented as part of Black Lives Matter. If conservatives don't want to be lumped in with the KKK, they can't lump violent protesters in with Black Lives Matter. And be honest about the history of the United States. This is something that, a lot of people have issues with when you start talking about slavery and all this crazy stuff that this country's gone through. Be honest about it. It did happen. So just be honest. And write to your city or town government representatives to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. A lot of companies, not companies, but a lot of cities across the United States have all gotten rid of Columbus Day. It doesn't exist. In fact, when I lived in California, I don't remember when they got rid of it. It must have been 20 years ago. But anyway, my point is that you may want to talk to city government or whatever. I don't know do we celebrate Columbus Day here in Indiana?
They have it as both, I think, they do celebrate it, but there are people that still call it Indigenous Peoples Day as well.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Did you want me to go back to that one?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So reflect and journal. Journaling is a crucial piece of the challenge. Take time to reflect on what you choose to do and how you're feeling. You can't do everything. Choose an area that if you find that there's a racial issue, choose an area to work on. That's what my white friends do. And they stick with it. So choose an area to work on. And don't feel bad if you can't do everything. And then work on it. Write letters, challenge people, walk out of the room when you hear racist jokes and so on and so forth. Difficult emotions such as shame and anger, though uncomfortable, can guide you to deeper self-awareness about how power and privilege impact you and the people in your life. And stay inspired. And I just put up some music that can help you to stay inspired. Born This Way by Lady Gaga, For Women by Nina Simone, Good as Hell, Lizzo, White Privilege, Macklemore, Roar, Katy Perry, Mercedes-Benz by Janis Joplin, and Where is the Love, Black Eyed Peas. Now, I've listened to all of those except Black Eyed Peas. I just love Lizzo. Yeah. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and converse with you over these 5 topics. And I hope that you learned as much as I did, because I learned an awful lot. Every time I pull this kind of, thing together and do this kind of work, I go back to the research and I try to update everything I've learned prior to, and then I want to make sure that when I'm sharing information with people, in terms of presentations, that I'm actually sharing updated information with you. So thank you again. And I want to thank the chief and the mayor for providing an opportunity for me to serve the Zionsville community.
And we do have a question.
Okay.
But it's actually a question for the audience. And the question is can we hear from the audience if they think America has the will to make changes that are needed pertaining to racism in this country?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So the audience respond. That's a great question.
So if anybody listening still wants to respond to that, we will take a few minutes to let you type up a response. While you're doing that, we have somebody that said, thank you so much for sharing this information with our community. Oh. And I also, like I said in the beginning, we do thank you for taking your own time and doing this for our community. It does say a lot about you, and we really appreciate you, and we're really grateful to have you. Yeah. Another person said thank you.
Oh. You're welcome to all of you, and I really, this has been a wonderful experience for me. I'm retired, but it gives me the opportunity to feel like I'm doing something, that's going of value. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. We do have one of the audience members that said, I think we are divided 50-50. I think that half of the people really want change and are waking up, and the other half are fighting to keep the status quo.
I absolutely concur with that. Mm-hmm. Did any of the other audience members respond?
So far, nobody. Somebody did. Oh, somebody just commented. Does not matter if the community has the will. This must still be done. Oh. So, I think I must be talking about the original comment that was asked to the audience.
Mm-hmm. I think that the Business Roundtable, now when you go online and go to Business Roundtable, you can actually see there's an opportunity to contact them. I think they should be applauded for what they have done and put out there for the general public to see. And the fact that the work that they are going to be doing, it's going to make critical changes across this country. Mm-hmm. I really think that should be the first letter that anybody writes.
Yeah. And to kind of go along with that, somebody else just made the statement that says, it takes conversations like this to move towards the goal. And
that's absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, I think that might be all the questions and comments we have for this evening. We want to thank everybody for tuning in with us. Some of you, I think, have been with us every single evening that we've done these series, and we appreciate that. I know I've learned a lot from Dr. Robinson-Armstrong. not only in the community series, but also when she's been presenting to the police department. And so I appreciate her helping to educate myself in these kind of conversations along with our community.
I need to say that I really do appreciate the opportunity that the chief gave me to do the research and come up with a presentation for the police department, because prior to doing that research and looking at the training across this country that other police departments had done, I actually did not know anything about policing, nothing. It took a long time to get to the point where I did feel like I was comfortable enough to go in and present information. And actually, what made it even better was the idea of co-presenting with you, because there were certain aspects of the training that really needed to be presented by a police person and not by a lay person like myself. But I learned so much about policing.
And I learned from you also. I think that's
great.
great. Yes. I think we had maybe one more come in before we sign off. They said, "This keeps us hopeful." Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm hopeful too.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you all, and have a great evening.